What's up, everybody? Been thinking about this story for the last 2 or 3 days. I'm wanting to sit down and read it for myself, and I guess to the internet. I don't know why I feel compelled to do this to the internet every now and then, but sometimes I get something stuck in my head. It's the best way to get it out. Now, I haven't read this story in a long time. It's Daniel in the Lion's Den. This is Daniel 6. I said I ain't even been studying in Daniel. For some reason, whether it was the big man upstairs or something else that triggered something in my subconscious, brought me here. So, and I was just going to read the last half. It's not a very long chapter. I think I'll just read the whole thing. So, I've already drank too much coffee, and it's like 7:30 in the morning. All right, and I read out of the NASB. This is Daniel 6. It seemed good to Darius to appoint 120 satraps over the kingdom, that they should be in charge of the whole kingdom. Satraps is, well, I mean, it tells you right there they're in charge. They're kind of like I don't know what you would call them, not ambassadors. What would you call them? They've got like they got little regions that they're, kind of like governors, I guess would be a good word for it. And over whom 3 commissioners, of whom Daniel was one, that these satraps might be accountable to him, and that the king might not suffer loss. And then this Daniel began distinguishing himself among the commissioners and satraps because he possessed an extraordinary spirit. And the king planned to appoint him over the entire kingdom. So Daniel was finna be number 2 in command, pretty much. Especially when it came to the affairs and everything that he was managing. And then the commissioners and satraps began trying to find a ground of accusation against Daniel in regard to government affairs, but they could find no ground of accusation or evidence of corruption, inasmuch as he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption was to be found in him. And that also, keep in mind too, that is just talking about governmental stuff. That ain't necessarily talking about anything otherwise. And then these commissioners and satraps came by agreement to the king and spoke to him as follows: King Darius, live forever. And all the commissioners of the kingdom and the prefects of the satraps and the high officials and the governors, I guess they got another word for governor, so satraps don't. Same. Y'all kind of get the picture of the hierarchy going on here. And the governors have consulted together that the king should establish a statute and enforce an injunction that anyone who makes a petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days shall be cast into the lion's den. Besides you, O king, for 30 days shall be cast into the lion's den. And I don't remember, because Daniel was only in the lion's den overnight. I thought, we'll find out here in a minute. So maybe that means this petition that they're fixing to use against him was only in effect for 30 days. I bet that's what they mean by that. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it may not be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which may not be revoked. So even though Darius is king, after he signs this thing and puts his seal on it or whatever they did, according to the other law of the land, even though he is king, he can't take his own word back. After he makes this thing, he's done made it. That's it, the end. I mean, you done throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's all over. It's done. All right. It can't be revoked. And therefore King Darius signed the document, that is, the injunction. And now when Daniel knew that the document was signed, he entered his house. Now in his roof chamber he had windows open towards Jerusalem. And he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day and praying and giving thanks before his God, and as he had been doing previously. And that's something else too that I hadn't been doing as faithfully as I ought to be is the 3 times a day prayers. Of course, I mean, I guess if you count praying when you eat, but for Thanksgiving over your food and stuff like that, but actually sitting down and having a formal prayer with the Father and 3 times a day like you're supposed to, and then aside from your other conversations, I guess is the best way to look at that. I need to get back into that. I'd like for my family to start keeping the Sabbath the way that we're supposed to. I never really have understood. Of course, it causes problems with work and everything else. But I mean, it is the fourth commandment. Why do we keep all the other commandments? Of course, you can get all kind of answers to that when you start typing in stuff on the internet and on YouTube and everything else. But I mean, that's number 4. And it's one of the commandments that has to do with our relationship with the Father. That's one of the biggest things. You would think it would be easier to drop some commandments that had to do with our brotherly relationships down here than it would be to drop one that has to do with our direct relationship with our Father. That's just me thinking. Maybe somebody in the chat will tell me how stupid I am today. Let's keep going. So Daniel been praying. He's got his windows open towards Jerusalem, praying towards Jerusalem. And these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and supplication before his God. So they came by. They already had this stuff set up, right? I mean, these other dudes that was working with Daniel and the folks that was working for him and all that, they done had this stuff set up already. But it's like, hey, we know he's going to be praying right now. Why don't you go on over and catch him? The thing that I don't understand about all this is that as much as Darius liked Daniel, you would think Darius would have been like, no, son, I ain't going to sign this. This is, this, my boy Daniel over here, he prays to his God. He don't, so I don't really understand that part. It's almost like Darius wasn't thinking. Maybe they slid that paper in amongst something else like an infrastructure bill or something. I can't be dropping politics in on a Bible video. I guess I can. I mean, anyway. I need to go wake my kids up and make them sit out here and listen to my goofiness in the morning. Oh, man. Alright, so, and then they approached and spoke before the king about the king's injunction. Did you not sign an injunction that any man who makes petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days is to be cast into the lion's den? The king answered and said, this statement is true, according to the law of Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked. And then they answered and spoke before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the injunction which you signed, but keeps making his petition 3 times a day. And then as soon as the king heard this statement, he was deeply distressed, and he set his mind on delivering Daniel, and even until sunset he kept exerting himself to rescue him. So he done knows that he's messed up, and he's trying to figure out a way to get Daniel out of it. And then as soon as the king heard this statement, he was deeply distressed. Okay, 15. And then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, recognize, O king, that it is the law of Medes and Persians that no injunction or statute which the king establishes may be changed. I think I got something escaped over there. Maybe. Surprised the dogs ain't there. If that is what it is. Yeah, y'all know I can't see right. That's why I wear these all the time. And then the king gave orders, and Daniel was brought in and cast into the lion's den. And the king spoke and said to Daniel, your God, whom you constantly serve, will himself deliver you. So even Darius was confident in the God of Israel, our God. And the stone was brought and laid over the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet rings of his nobles, so that nothing might be changed in regard to Daniel. And the king went off to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no entertainment was brought before him, and his sleep fled from him. And the king arose with the dawn at the break of day, and went in haste to the lion's den. And when he had come near the den of Daniel, he cried out with a troubled voice, and the king spoke and said to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, is your God, whom you constantly serve, been able to deliver you from the lions? And Daniel spoke to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, inasmuch as I was found innocent before him, and also toward you, O king, I have committed no crime. And then the king was very pleased, and gave orders for Daniel to be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatever was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king gave orders, and they brought those men who had maliciously accused Daniel, that they cast them, their children, and their wives into the lion's den. And they had not reached the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Dang, son, they even threw the kids in there. All the children and all the wives into the lion's den. And Darius the king wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language who were living in the land, may your peace abound. And I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom men are to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and enduring forever, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed, and his dominion will be forever. He delivers and rescues and performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has also delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel enjoyed success in the reign of Darius, and the reign of Cyrus the Persian, and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. And I think this makes really good sense to be reading this right now, to be honest with you. I mean, if you think about current political situations and stuff like that going on around the world right now, reading this is not exactly that popular of a thing to be doing, especially not on the internet. I mean, even on my own channel, these videos, I mean, if there's anything biblical in the title, you only get, a couple hundred folks come in here and watch and read with us, which is fine. I'm happy to have the company. But Daniel was he was pretty much persecuted by his peers in a corrupt government. And which the difference is that he was Daniel got himself in a pickle because he was good at his job and found favor in the eyes of the king. That's not the same thing, well, it kind of could be, if you think about it. I'm trying to put this together. Y'all know I have trouble using my words, right? So Daniel was, because of the favor the king showed to him and stuff like that, and he was fixing to make him, and sure enough, charge some stuff, right? And they used Daniel's faith and his religion against him. But they don't say anything in there that they necessarily had anything against our God, that Daniel's God. They just needed that. That was just the tool that they used to try to get him killed. I think y'all see where I'm going with this a little bit. So if you think about that and apply it to yourself, and most of the folks that's going to watch this be interested in it, and most of the folks that's kind of in our little internet group of community people here are not of the same mindset, but you are in a similar category, especially as the government is concerned. Um, if you can't beat somebody at the game that you're not wanting to be bested in, you pick something else, like religion, and categorize somebody and try to maybe label somebody. Because we do read the Bible. Bible and our guns, right? Got two of them sitting there on the porch. See what I mean? You know, and the thing about it is, you know, Daniel, the faith of Daniel. I mean, there's a lot of grown men that I know that are scared to death of the dark, and I'm not making fun of you. I mean, there's some stuff that goes on out there, and you know, sleeping at night in the dark alone in the middle of the bottoms and stuff like that is kind of it's something that it's one of those kind of things that you have to get familiar with yourself. I mean, there's some noises and some critters and stuff out there crawling around that you ain't used to hearing when you're trying to lay your head down and go to sleep. I get that. I understand very well. But the point that I was trying to make by saying that is that imagine being somebody like Daniel, which of course back in them times everybody was a wilderness survivalist, just about. But imagine being somebody like Daniel. You know, he's a government guy, and you know he's right up in there, finna be right up underneath the king, and he gets thrown in a cave with a big old rock shoved over the end of it, down there with a bunch of lines that they already use as an execution deal. You know, they throw people down there to die, to get eaten alive. And you get thrown down there, and the faith that he had to have to, you know, to come through that and be sitting there on the other side and be like, hey man, no, God sent one of his messengers in here, and we sat around, drew circles in the dirt, and waited on you to show back up, pretty much. And you know, and it always, you know, just kind of a side note, it intrigues me sometimes the characters that God uses and how oftentimes it'll be one person in an unlikely position that God will use to show his power and authority and stuff. So I'll talk to y'all later. I done rambled on for almost 20 minutes. I'm gonna go in here and get ready for Bible school at church, I guess. Bible school and church. And I'll probably be hollering at y'all later today. Happy Sunday.